Hobbit's movies have received very mixed reactions. While the ratings on websites are positive and I've met a lot of people who enjoyed the movies, a large section of viewers despised these movies for their inaccuracy to the books. I have seen a ton of comments, articles and reviews talking about all the changes the movies made and how awful the movies are because of it. Sure, there are probably people who dislike the movie for entirely different reasons, but this is usually the argument I hear as to why someone didn't like them. Personally, I thought there were a couple of changes in the movies that I ended up liking more than the actual book. Therefore, I'd like to make a top 5 out of it. Before I start this list, you must know that the things I'm going to talk about are things I think are an improvement over the original story only. So if something is not present in the book, I'm not gonna mention it on this list, even when I like it. Let's not waste any more time and start the list. Number 5. You see more sides of the Master of Lake Town.
It's not my fault they live in a place that stinks of fish oil and tar. Jobs, shelter, food. It's all they ever bleat about.
The Master of Lake Town, aka the Mayor, is a smaller character in the book. A notable difference between the movies and the book is that, in the book, once the dwarves enter Lake Town, they are welcomed with open arms. The Mayor welcomes the dwarves and holds a feast, nothing more. After that, he survives the attack of SMAUG, unlike the movie, but later on you hear he died during the Battle of the Five Armies while trying to sneak away with gold. In the movie, the dwarves have to stay hidden, sneak in the town and avoid guards. Why the movie changed this particular part, I have no idea. I think as an attempt to create more suspense, but I didn't think this change really added anything to the story of the dwarves. However, it did give an opportunity to show more of the Master of Lake Town, played perfectly by Stephen Fry. In the book, when Bard talks with the people about what to do after the attack, the people start talking negatively about the Mayor. This was an odd part in the book because you never got to see the negative parts. He actually came across as a nice guy, making it very weird when the people started to talk negative about him. In the movie, you get to see what kind of man he is outside of the spotlights. You get to see the dark parts of the city, making it more understandable why people wouldn't be fond of the Mayor. It also makes it more satisfying to see him go down when he tries to leave his people behind while taking gold with him. It felt a bit off and unimportant in the book the way the people talked about him, but the movie managed to make a more three-dimensional character out of him.
An objection? That's absurd. I would stand for it.
Number 4. Bard gets introduced early on. In the book, Bard is a non-existing character until the attack of SMAUG. Once SMAUG attacks the city, out of nowhere a man gets introduced and you suddenly follow this stranger named Bard. Bard ends up being the one to kill SMAUG, and after that he does the same as in the movie. He tries to negotiate with Thorin and becomes some kind of leader figure to the people of Lake Town. In the movie, they encounter Bard right after the barrel ride, and he is the one to introduce them to the city. You even get to see his family and get an impression of how the city is during everyday life. Having a better understanding of who Bard is and what kind of city he lives in adds more suspense to the fight because you know what's at stake. But that is not everything the movie adds about Bard. Take a look at this scene.
Let us not forget that it was Gillian, Lord of Dale, your ancestor, who failed to kill the beast.
This important detail adds more to the moment where Bard confronts the dragon, making it more personal. It isn't just a random warrior confronting a dragon, it is a character you know finishing the job of slaying a monster that killed his ancestors. This makes the Bard of the movie a better developed character than the one from the book.
Who are you that would stand against me?
Number 3. More character added to certain dwarves. In both the book and the movie, a lot of the dwarves' roles are extremely small, almost non-existent, but the movies try hard to add as much character to each dwarf as they possibly can. One of the ways they do that is with the costume design. I freaking love how these characters look. In the book, they describe how the dwarves look, but since it's no visual medium, you can quickly forget the dwarves with no dialogue even exist, let alone remember how they look. The movie uses its visual medium to its advantage by giving each dwarf a distinguished look that makes them stand out from other dwarves. The costumes are gorgeous and there's so much life added to each dwarf just based on how they look. Even when they barely said or did anything, they still left an impression on me. But looks aren't all. There are a couple of dwarves who have much more things to do in the movie than in the book. Bofur and Dwalin especially.
Cheese knife. He eats it by the block.
You don't belong anywhere.
Well, that could have been worse. Is that the time?
Don't move. The battle will be over by tomorrow's eve.
The wild is no place for gentle folk who can neither fight nor fend for themselves.
If you speak of this to anyone, I'll rip your arms off.
Thorin, they are dying out there.
Next to these dwarves, they tried to give each dwarf at least one thing to say or to do, so they won't be completely ignored. And there are multiple scenes where we see the dwarves just having fun as a group. If you want to make every dwarf of the book feel alive, you have very little material to work with, but the movies managed to make the best of it, and I appreciate them for that. Number 2. Thorin's Dragon Sickness. Thorin gets obsessed with the treasure of the dragon, obsessed with the Arkenstone, and this obsession completely changes his character. He loses his love for the other dwarves, becomes angry if anything doesn't go his way, and he refuses to give the people of Lake Town, who have been attacked by SMAUG, some money to rebuild their lives even when he promised to. In the book, I think this is a rather weakly executed part of the story. Thorin is himself until SMAUG is defeated. Then he has a change of heart and becomes the angry Thorin who suffers from dragon sickness. This change of heart is partly understandable. I don't think this particular part of the dragon sickness is bad, because up until this point he didn't have this much gold within his grasp, but I do think the dragon sickness comes a bit out of nowhere. The book never gave a hint that the treasure meant this much to him and would influence his behavior. However, the movies did. From the moment they reach the mountain, Thorin starts to show odd behavior, starting to put getting the treasure above the safety of Bilbo.
A Thorin I know would not hesitate to go in there.
I will not risk this quest for the life of one burglar.
Even going as far as to stop him from leaving when Bilbo tries to run from SMAUG. When SMAUG attacks the city, Thorin is not even looking. His mind is entirely focused on the mountain and the treasure. So when Bilbo says,
"He's been down there for days. He doesn't sleep. He barely eats. He's not been himself."
it feels more developed, not like something that comes out of nowhere. But what I really hated about the book is how Thorin changes his mind and overcomes the dragon sickness. There's nothing. What I mean by that is, from the moment the battle begins, Thorin is hiding inside and you never get to see or hear anything from him. Out of nowhere he jumps out and is a good guy again. I thought him getting dragon sickness was rather sudden but believable enough, but this was a complete out of nowhere 180 turn without any reason. In the movie, there's a great scene between Bilbo and Thorin where he shows Thorin an acorn to plant when he returns. This scene shows that, even with the dragon sickness, Thorin still has good in him. The dwarves keep confronting him with his choices, as well as there's one clever scene that takes place in Thorin's mind, where he makes the decision not to continue his ways and go back to the leader he once was. It's a weakly executed plot element in the book, but in the movie it is treated in a way that makes Thorin's changes of heart much more believable. And my number one good change in the Hobbit's movies is they actually tried to fight SMAUG. This is one thing I simply didn't like about the book. When Bilbo awakens SMAUG and SMAUG goes on an attack spree, the dwarves run and hide in the dark corner in the mountains, where they sit down and do nothing. And I mean, they sit there for days and days, even when SMAUG has already left for a long time, without doing anything. At first, it's understandable they're afraid to do something since SMAUG is a giant dragon and the dwarves don't have a lot of options. But I think anything would have been better than sitting in a corner and waiting for the problem to solve itself. What did they expect would happen when they reached the mountain? Their quest, the point of this entire journey, is to reclaim their home. So yes, of course there's going to be a confrontation with the dragon. The dragon doesn't magically fly away and doesn't return if you steal some of his gold. If anything, it massively pisses him off and increases the chances of him roasting you. It made me wonder what precisely they wanted to do if they reached the mountain, since they reacted like they weren't prepared for a dragon attack. If it were up to the characters from the book, SMAUG would have destroyed the city and the dwarves would have died of starvation. The reason SMAUG died has nothing to do with their plan, which made them really lucky it turned out how it did. It just made the characters look unprepared and dumb. The movie does this way better in my opinion, since they actually try to fight him. At first they run in a dark corner to hide, but then there's a clever scene where they see the dead bodies of other dwarves that were hiding from SMAUG. They realize this isn't how they want to die. Reclaiming the mountain was their quest all along. They traveled a long way and they're not going to give it up without a fight. Since weapons don't do anything to SMAUG, they come up with the idea to lure him to a chamber and try to drown him in a load of fluid gold. I've read a lot of hate comments about this fight, and even I have to admit the plan is very risky and very over the top, but in all honesty, I don't mind at all. It offers some spectacular action imagery you will not see in any other movie, and story-wise I think it is a million times better they actually tried to do something instead of giving up and declaring themselves dead. It makes the characters more heroic, more likable, and it increased the drama when the plan failed and SMAUG punished them by going to the city. I admit it has silly moments and is over the top, but I love it nonetheless and would pick this part over the book anytime. So that were my 5 picks for changes I liked more than in the books. Do you have some changes you liked but weren't mentioned? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.
When you're finished, they play a whole